Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Canada Day. And it's a pleasure for me to welcome back my mom, Flora Crombie, who is a great mom. But in addition to that, she is an expert at art. She's been a docent at the Art Gallery, National Gallery of Art in Ottawa. She's done similar things at the Art Gallery in Toronto. She's graduated in art and was it art and architecture, art and art archaeology,
Archaeology.
art and
Art and
archaeology,
archaeology.
just
Yeah.
a decade or two ago. And she and I were talking with our family about what would be a great way to celebrate Canada Day this year. And we talked about the tragedy in Kamloops at the residential school. And we thought about some of the shows that many of you have commented on that you really loved. My mom talking about, we've done art appreciation, we've done art at Easter, art for Mother's Day, art for Canada. And what we decided to do is Indigenous art as a way of celebrating the Indigenous contribution to Canada. And so happy Canada Day, Mom.
Okay, thank you. Happy Canada Day. But boy, what a challenge. You know, there are over 600 First Nations bands in Canada.
600, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to add into that art done by the Inuit and the Métis as well.
Yeah.
And we're looking at things from Northwest Coast to Cape Breton, Newfoundland, Labrador, up to Cape Dorset. It a huge area to cover. And so many different kinds of artists working independently, not just in the Northwest Coast School or the Woodland School of Legend Painters, but a wide variety of things. So I just picked out a few to show you that have appealed to me for a variety of reasons.
Wonderful.
And let's start with a print by Benjamin Chichi.
Okay.
Brian, can you remember this?
I can't.
As a teenager, you saw Good Morning hanging on our kitchen wall.
Okay, right.
Yep. You're going to show it to the people now?
Yep, they're seeing it.
Really? I can't see it.
Yep.
Well, I've always appreciated the simple curving lines outlining the Canada goose. Mostly in black, a little bit of sandy brown gives shape to its head, and then there's a long, beautiful curve reaching out to the sun. Benjamin Chichi, as far as we know, had no training in art at all. He was born in Temagami, Ontario, of Ojibwe descent. He had a troubled youth. His father died, I think, shortly after he was born. Sometime during his teenage years, he lost track of his mother. They became separated. And he moved to Montreal and kept trying to find her. Kept making prints because he thought maybe by making prints, he would reach her through his publicity with the prints. He moved to Ottawa sometime in the early 50s, and he died by suicide in an Ottawa jail at the age of 32.
Really?
Really, really sad. But when I look at this picture, I'm struck by the curving, the simplicity of it, and the curving line. You can almost feel your hand trying to make that curve going way out to the side, and the confidence to do that free-handed. Even the rotund body of the Canada goose is beautiful. And look at how firmly the feet are planted on the ground. They're really just sort of two single lines going straight out on either side of his body.
Yep. Beautiful.
Just a fun print to begin with. But let's go from that to Bill Reid, a Haida artist from the West. And he's an interesting character. He had a Haida mother, but his father was an American, actually with Scottish roots. So Bill was about 23 before he even started looking into his Haida background. And he was a radio announcer out west before joining CBC in Toronto in 1948. And in his spare time, he decided to study jewelry at the Ryerson Institute of Technology. By 1954, he was back out west in Vancouver, establishing himself as a modern jeweler. And look at his beautiful work. He used images of bear, raven, frog, killer whale. He would have seen some of those on the early totem poles.
Yep.
Typical Haida imagery. Beautiful engraving.
And this is an actual bracelet.
This is a bracelet.
Fantastic.
He's known more for his huge monumental works. In fact, you may remember, if you show them Spirit of Haida Gwaii, this image was on our previous $20 bill.
You're right.
This was commissioned by the architect for the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C. And I think there are 4 or 5 of them around. An artist or sculptor is allowed to do that without calling them copies. I know there's one here in white in the Museum of History in Gatineau, and there's one in the Vancouver airport. I'm not sure how many others there are around, but it's quite large. It's fascinating in that canoe is absolutely packed full.
It sure is.
Animals that don't look as if they're particularly happy to be in there together, but they all are paddling in the same direction. So that makes for a happy feeling. One of his quotes was, "Joy is a well-made object, equaled only by the joy of making it."
Joy is a well-made object, made equal only by the joy of making it.
Yeah.
Well, there is a lot of joy in artistic endeavors, isn't there?
I like that. I really like that.
Mom, we're going to take a break for some messages and come back more in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody.
Well, the next person I want to look at is our
Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. It's a real pleasure today, Canada Day, for me to be joined by my mom, Flora Crombie, who is, I think, an expert in art. She's been a docent for the National Gallery of Art in Ottawa. She's done similar work in Toronto. She's been interested in art her whole life. One of the rare pleasures in my life is going through art galleries with her and having her tour me around and telling me about the different artists and different pieces of art on the walls. And we've done a couple of shows, and I get lots of people that come in and say, "Bring your mom back, bring your mom back." We've done art appreciation, we've done art at Easter, we've done art for Canada, and we did today. We're doing Indigenous art for really an appreciation of Indigenous contribution to Canada on Canada Day. So Flora Crombie, my mom, what have we got next?
Well, we've got Novell Morisseau, and I even brought my shawl to remind you of some of his works.
That's a beautiful shawl.
Yeah, this was given to me a number of years ago by one of my grandsons, actually. Morisseau, at one point in time, was probably the best known Indigenous artist in Canada. He was born in 1932 in the Sandpoint Ojibwe Reserve in northern Ontario. He was sometimes called the Picasso of the North, and he actually founded the Woodland School of Art. I'm trying to get this so you can see it all.
It's gorgeous.
This is the Great Eagle. His maternal grandparents raised him. His grandmother took him to a Catholic church. And he said that the stained glass windows with the heavy lead sides on the colors really influenced his work from then on. The leaded glass appealed to him. And the idea that you didn't leave any blank spaces. He's got everything filled up all the way around. You even sort of see the great eagle has swallowed a fish and the fish seems to take up the entire contents of his interior. At age 6, he was sent to a Catholic residential school to be educated in the European tradition. But after about 2 years, he returned home to a local school. And in 1956, he contracted tuberculosis. He was sent off to Fort William Sanatorium to recover, and that's where he met his wife. Now, he got a commission, and it was largely the result of being exhibited in Toronto by a Toronto artist and art dealer by the name of Jack Pollock. And if you read through all of the stuff about Jack Pollock, who made who famous, oh, that exhibit was a huge success. A lot of his paintings sold, and Jack Pollock was famous, and his art store in Toronto did a great business.
Oh, really?
But as a result of that, at Expo 67, Morisseau got a commission to do a work which actually ended up voicing the dissatisfaction of First Nations people of Canada with their sort of social and political situation. So maybe they weren't too happy that they'd given him that opening. But as I say, he became the best known Indigenous artist in all of Canada for a period of years.
Oh, really?
The National Gallery had a retrospective of his work in 2005, and he actually died in 2007. So then the next artist I want you to look at.
Bright colors, very vibrant, bright colors.
Yep. The next one I want you to look at is Alex Javier. That one. Now this one is actually a painting that's owned by your brother, David.
Oh, really?
When they were living in Cold Lake, Alberta, they went to Javier's own studio there, his own art gallery. And obviously when they saw this painting, they couldn't walk away from it. It's called Becoming Feather. Javier has an interesting history. He was from a big family, the youngest, and he was sent off to residential school at the age of 6. He'd drawn in sand with a stick, but he had never before had colored pencils and paper. And every Friday at the school, they had art day. And they discovered that he could really draw, that he had a great eye, and he did beautiful work. And he said it was really his drawing that helped him survive his years at the residential school.
Right.
He did so well that they sent him, after he completed his elementary education, they sent him to a secondary technical school where he actually had training in art. But the most magnificent project, of course, is his ceiling work. And I think we've got that coming up next. The next slide. This is in the Museum of History here. This is a
In Ottawa, or in Gatineau.
Well, in Gatineau, yeah, across the river. Dave said he was a lovely man with an impish sense of humor. Morning Star, done on the ceiling of the Museum of History, is supposedly showing 5 centuries of conflict. It's 62 feet in diameter. And it's sort of 6 stories up.
Oh, really?
Ground floor. Yeah, you look up at it as a sort of big concave dome of a ceiling. One of his sons helped him in the painting of it. And I can't begin to describe it all to you. The medicine wheel is sort of described in the center. But again, you've got the bright colors, lovely curving lines. If you go to the website for the Museum of History in Gatineau, I think you'll get a complete description of it, as well as a complete tour of the gallery. Something for parents to do on a boring day.
Would he have painted this in place or at a studio and then brought it here?
No, he painted it up there on the ceiling. He and his son between them.
Oh my God! So he would have been like Michelangelo painting on the ceiling of the the Sistine
Exactly.
Chapel,
Exactly.
lying on his back, I guess.
I guess. No,
Unbelievable.
they did have some sort of a frame that they concocted underneath it, but it must have been a horrible, horrible job to do it.
Any idea how long it took?
No, but it's gorgeous.
It really is.
But if you go to the Museum of History, I'm sure they'll give you a complete tour of it. So,
Again, vibrant colors.
so then we go from somebody who had some expertise and training to Annie Putuguk. And you may wonder why I chose this as an Inuit selection. Brian, I had a great talk, long talk with your Uncle Chip, probably 10 years ago. And it actually began with music rather than with visual art because I did not like some of the music he was playing. And I said, it's too warlike, it's too military. And he said, but Flora, you've got to realize what was going on in that country at that time. He said, history is usually written by victors. And we've got to look to the artists, the musicians, sometimes even the poets, to find out what the people were going through when this was happening. So Annie is somebody who came from Cape Dorset, a family of artists who came to try and make a life in Ottawa. Now, she probably came from a house that did not have permanent walls that you could actually put things like a clock on. She probably never had a clock before. You didn't live by a clock if you lived in the Inuit life of Cape Dorset. You ate when you were hungry and you went to bed and slept when you were tired. You didn't have a chair to sit on, you sat on the floor. And here she is. It's called Woman Making, I've forgotten the name, Chemics, I think they called it, 2006. It's owned by the National Gallery. But I thought the details were fascinating. She has a radio, and there's even a little table that the radio is on with an antenna. And do you see, there's even a wire going down from the radio and is plugged into the wall?
Yep.
I mean, these were all things that she hadn't experienced ever before in her life. And she's making what we would call muktuks for her daughter, rain boots. Life was very, very difficult for her. She tried hard. She had support groups. I had friends who supported her, tried to push her work around and make it popular. Unfortunately, her body was found in the Rideau River, drowned in 2016. We don't know whether she committed suicide, whether it was an accident. Who knows? But it was and is still very, very difficult for some of these Inuit artists to exist in the 20th or 21st century in Canada.
I can imagine.
So then let's go out west again to a happier story. Susan Point, born in 1952 in Alert Bay, BC. And this is an absolutely gorgeous picture. It's a stained glass window. There are 5 panels. Can you see all the 5 panels of it, I wonder?
Yes.
In a cathedral, Christchurch Cathedral, a commissioned painting. Interesting story. She was actually on maternity leave from her job as a legal secretary when she decided to take a course that the Vancouver School of Technology was offering to Inuits in jewelry making. So her first work as an artist was as a jewelry maker. And she made some beautiful things. She's widely recognized as an important influence on the next generation of North Coast artists. Her large carving of the beaver and mink in 2004 was actually commissioned by the Canadian government as a gift to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C.
Oh, really?
She has many, many honors. I'm not sure how many her work is influenced by traditional Coast Salish art production. And it's wonderful that she was able to make a name for herself, because up till that time, all of that artwork out there was dominated by male.
Right.
So to have a female do this beautiful work and be accepted, she has a number of honorary degrees. She's been appointed an officer of the Order of Canada.
Where is this, Mom? It's in, you said Christ Church Cathedral?
Christ Church Cathedral in Vancouver.
Is that right downtown? Do you know?
Yeah. And it's an older church, and it has something like 30 stained glass windows that are very traditional. So when she got this commission, she had to come up with a design that would more or less be compatible with the other windows. And I mean, Tree of Life, what could be more fitting?
But it's interesting that the tree is beautiful, but there's not green on it. And so it's like autumn, I would presume.
But you've got branches out over blue water. You can see blue mountains behind, and see pink salmon down at the bottom here.
Yep.
And I think there's even a bird up at the top.
Absolutely gorgeous. There is.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that it's autumn rather than springtime or summertime.
Well, green in stained glass can be difficult.
Right.
It can be too much, just sort of jade green. Here she's been able to achieve a variety of shadings of brown. It's not sort of solidly brown.
Yeah. And you called the mountains blue. I think the mountains are green, but they're beautiful.
Well, I think they're blue. This is the blue of the Pacific down here.
Yeah.
She also has a large stained glass window in the Vancouver airport.
Oh, does she?
Yep. And every year she publishes a print, a signed limited edition print of her work. She has really made a success of artwork, and she's works hard at it, and she deserves her praise and her glory, because it's gorgeous work.
It certainly is. No question about that. We're going to take a break for some more messages.
Let's go.
We're going to take a break for some more messages and come back more with Flora Crombie and Indigenous art in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. It's my pleasure to welcome back my mom, Flora Crombie, who is an expert on art, to talk on Canada Day a little bit about Indigenous art. And we thought that given some of the things that have been going on with residential schools and you know, everything, that really understanding a little bit more about what our Indigenous brothers and sisters have contributed to Canadian culture would be worthwhile. Mom, I've been noticing again, as you've been talking, there's a piece behind you. What's the piece behind you on the wall?
Well, it's from Cape Dorset. I don't think you can bring it into focus any better than that, but you can certainly see the hunter holding his harpoon up high above his head, his legs widely braced. It almost makes a V of his shape, and one arm up and is ready to throw. Oh, actually, I'm not really quite sure. I think I got it from my mother, and she had it as part of a Christmas card. And I loved it. And I said, I want that. I'll take it and I'll frame it and put it up on the wall.
Awesome.
Yeah, It's all blue with a little bit of black, and using the white of the paper as sort of the other background color. But the motion and the lines, again, really you feel the force of and the strength of the body of the man.
No question. And show us your shawl again, if you could.
Okay. This is Novell Morisseau.
Absolutely beautiful. And again, the colors.
Today is a little bit warm here, so I'm not actually wearing it. That's why I just brought it to show.
And you've got people on it.
Yeah. And again, he hasn't signed his name. He's just put down, I guess, whatever it is in Ojibwe language. Whoops, I can't, trying to find that somewhere. Underneath that figure.
I love the vibrant, very vibrant colors.
The colors. Well, the next one I'm going to show you by Loretta Gould, an artist from Cape Breton. And I had never heard about her, so she was a completely new find for me. Interesting woman. Again, born and brought up on a reserve in Cape Breton. Her mother was a sewer with a sewing machine, which she passed on to Loretta. And Loretta had seen a quilt in a local mall, a brightly colored quilt, and she loved it, but she couldn't afford to buy it. So she started making quilts herself and selling them. And she discovered, she had 6 children, but she discovered she could make a lot of money making these beautiful colored quilts until, of course, the machine broke. And she had to send it away to be repaired. However, her oldest daughter said to her, while it's gone, why don't you try painting? And she got her some acrylic paints and paper, and she started making pictures, using some of the legends that she knew and using some of her eye for color that she had used making quilts. And Brian, interesting, some of her first sales were to Finland and Germany.
Oh, really? They were more
Rather than-
interested in Canada.
Yeah. And this particular piece is in a gallery in British Columbia.
And describe it. We've got is it a turtle
The turtle at the bottom,
with
Now-
a buffalo inside of it?
it looks like an ox inside it, and somebody fishing with fish inside the ox, and sitting on top, Mother Earth. It's called Mother Earth Loves Nature, watches over Turtle Island, where water people live in respect, and in return they are provided with plenty. Now, did you realize that when Indigenous people refer to something as Turtle Island, they mean North America?
No, I didn't know that.
That's what it is. Apparently, if you were to flatten out a turtle, you more or less get the shape of North America.
I didn't know that. That's
I
fascinating.
didn't either until I started researching this, and I said, oh my goodness, that's what they're talking about when they say Turtle Island. But this is really quite beautiful, and I don't know if there you can see the sky up above.
Yep.
And Mother Earth is part of a tree. The tree has got branches going all the way around, and Mother Earth seems to be sitting on top of the turtle's back.
But again, the tree that is part of Mother Earth doesn't have any leaves on it.
No,
Why?
I don't know. And look at the water underneath the turtle, the stylized waves.
Yep.
Isn't that lovely?
It's interesting.
Done in 2016. She called, here it says Into the Night. Don't know why it was called that.
And why the person inside, the ox inside, the turtle inside, below Mother Earth? Any idea?
I don't know. I don't know.
But
all
again,
part of some legend.
incredible, vivid colors. Blue, red, orange, yellow, black.
Yeah, they draw bits and pieces of legends that we've never heard of
Right.
and work them all together in their works. They're gorgeous, fascinating. All right, let's move on to Lee Dorian, because I've got. When you're driving from, say, Ontario to Alberta, and you come into Saskatchewan, you're absolutely amazed at the size of the sky. you can see the horizon all the way around you. The horizon line is so low, the land is so flat, and Dorion is a Métis artist who makes great use of that low horizon and a huge sky. This is called Two Drums Become One. And you can see 4 women dancing around a flame, but look at the sky above them. I'm not sure whether this, I almost hear music when I look at this sky.
Yeah.
It's full of zigzags and colors and all kinds of different shapes. And you can see sort of the twirling going up from the flames.
Beautiful.
And the
flames.
drums.
Is this a celebration, I would presume?
Two Drums Become One, done in 2014, obviously are celebrating. These 4 women, probably dressed in very traditional Métis costumes. Each one is slightly different. The dresses that the women are wearing are in shades of blue. One with a very, very broad flounce around the neck. They all have quite long black hair. We're only seeing part of a face of one of them. Lee's characters never show their faces. I don't know exactly what that means, whether it's part of the old idea that you were diminishing a person if you actually showed their face. They're left blank anyway, but she more often has the head sort of turned like this. Lee is an educator. She has a Bachelor of Education, actually, to add to her Master of Art degree. She is an educator. She has produced coloring books for children of all ages. She's written a children's book, and she makes beautiful designs with things added to them. There could be beads on this that you can't see. There could be tiny little bits of colored stones, a great variety of added to the original acrylic paint on canvas as it is.
Where is this? Do you know, Mom?
I have a friend, Reverend Nancy. I think this is part of her website. I don't know that this is for sale, but this is just one of her favorite drawings.
Right.
And I did get permission to use it, Brian, in case you're wondering. I sent her an email and asked her if I could use it, and she said yes.
Oh, good. And you said you had a friend,
But
what?
one of my friends, Nancy Best, Reverend Nancy Best, who had a birthday a couple of weeks ago, and her granddaughter gave her a beautiful blue stole for a birthday present. It was a real shawl with fringe on it. And she wore it on her Facebook picture. And I immediately looked at it and said, that's got to be Lee Dorion's work. She said, oh, you recognized it. Well, how come? I said, nobody else has painted skies like that.
Oh, really?
She just does such a gorgeous job. So if you catch Navan United Church on Sundays, you'll see Reverend Nancy, who has Indigenous background herself, conducting worship wearing a shawl designed, and there are stores in Ottawa that carry Indigenous work, and I guess there's got to be one in Toronto as well. I don't know.
Right. Mom, let me ask you a few questions. Of a lot of the art you've shown, the color is unbelievably vibrant. Is that typical of Indigenous art?
I would say so, yes. And they particularly like red, blue, yellow, primary colors. You don't get much blending of color.
And a lot of legends. Is that would that be one of the typical subjects that you've seen depicted?
I would say so. And usually they are legends that we don't know anything about.
Right.
I
But I
mean,
love the way that you describe the sky and how big it is in Saskatchewan. And that makes sense. That would be something that they would want to depict.
the only other artist that I can think of who used the sky to his advantage, and I'm struggling trying to remember his name, who painted a big black mushroom cloud. for calling or foreseeing at some point we would have an atomic disaster here.
Oh, really?
I'd never liked that idea that that whole sky could be filled with a big black cloud.
We're chatting tonight with my mom, Flora Crombie, who's an art expert, about Indigenous art. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to a special edition of the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Canada Day, where we're talking about Indigenous art with my mom, Flora Crombie, who's an art docent, or at least has been, and art and archaeology major in university a little while ago. And we've done a couple of shows on different aspects of art. And we just thought it would be really fun to talk about Indigenous art this Canada Day. Mom, I really have enjoyed reviewing this. You've been a student of art your whole life. Is people's appreciation of Indigenous art something that's always existed, or something that's only, come into flavor and fashion lately, or what? How would you explain that? You've got this Christmas card behind you that you turned into a piece of art. I remember, Inuit art in our house, statues forever. Tell me about Canadians' appreciation of Indigenous art.
Well, in the first place, you've got to see it. You can't know something and like it until you become sort of familiar with it.
Right.
And for a long time, well, I mentioned with Novell Morisseau that it was actually Jack Pollock in Toronto, an art dealer, who saw the potential and made his work known and visible. It takes somebody to promote you, and very often the Indigenous artists were not promoters. They didn't have the circle, they didn't know how to actually go about promoting their own work. Probably today more of them do have a good education and are qualified to make their statement public and know how to spread the word about, look, this is what I'm doing and it's worth looking at.
You mentioned the Museum of History in Gatineau. Is that one of the best places to see Indigenous art in Canada? Or is there specific, you think about the McMichael Gallery that exhibits a group of 7. Is there a best place to see Indigenous art?
No, the National Gallery is doing better. I mean, we've had a retrospective of Alex Janvier's work in the last, trying to think, it'd be almost 10 years ago now, I guess it was. And before that, they did have a retrospective of Novell Morisseau's work as well. It's taken a long time for people to adjust to it. Just as, think of our group of 7, most of those artists actually died before their work became famous.
Right. This piece, the Jade Canoe, the spirit of Haida, what is it, Gwali, by Bill Reed, that is, as I think you mentioned, was on our...
Haida Gwai.
Pardon?
Haida Gwai.
Haida Gwai. Which bill was on? Was the $20 bill?
Yes.
I think really...
Not the present one, the past one, the one...
But it really showed Canadian art, Canadian Indigenous art to everyone, didn't it?
Yep.
And it was in the Canadian Embassy, you said, in Washington, as well as in the National,
yes.
the Museum of History.
It was commissioned by the architect for the Canadian Embassy in Washington. Uh-huh.
I think my most favorite one that you've shown us is this ceiling in the Museum of History that you mentioned.
It is gorgeous. It's too bad that it's so hard to see. I mean,
you got to get right under it and look up.
You practically have to be lying on your back, looking up to see it. Yeah.
Well, I can remember being in the Sistine Chapel actually about 2 years ago, just today.
Yeah.
I was in the Sistine Chapel and had to sort of similarly crick your neck pretty high to enjoy it.
No, it is beautiful. It's hard to understand it, but I was impressed that Dave said he literally couldn't walk away from that picture. We were just so taken by the shapes in it, the way I mean, the idea of becoming feather really appealed to him. And I can imagine that stained glass window out in the. I haven't been to Vancouver since a couple of these things were installed in Vancouver Airport.
And this stained glass window, Susan Point Tree of Life, must be just gorgeous to see the sun shining through the window.
Uh-huh.
The other favorite one that I think that you've shown us is The Great Eagle by Novell Morisseau.
Yes.
And again, brilliant colors. And you can see, I think what you mentioned is the use of or his experience with stained glass and wanting to have the big black outlines for each one of the
I think
colors.
it's interesting too that he didn't want to leave any spaces vacant. He's got these sort of balloons of color all the way around.
Yeah. And then I love your idea of the big sky in Saskatchewan.
Yes, well, and I mean, the things that she manages to put in it, this is just one example, but I look at it and I think there are spirits dancing in that sky.
Mom, how do people best appreciate art? Is it taking a tour, going with a tour guide, just staring at it? Like if someone is intrigued by one of your shows and wants to do a little bit more in regards to appreciating art, what do you recommend they do?
Well, some of the tours of galleries online are worth taking, I think. I mean, you say the McMichael still has a tour, I think. The National Gallery is promoting Rembrandt right now, and they're combining some indigenous works of art along with it, and I'm not quite sure whether we're getting much other than wampum belts and woven things. The fact that Rembrandt was Dutch and the Dutch East India Company was trading around the world and using various kinds of money, we might say. Somehow they managed to link that up with indigenous means of exchange, I guess. How do you get to know different kinds of music? You have to hear it, you have to listen to it. It takes time.
I interviewed someone about that, and they said that the only way to really appreciate music is to lie down on the bed or on a floor or whatnot, close your eyes, and listen to the colors. And I thought that was interesting. That this expert on music thought that you had to listen to the colors with your eyes closed. And I've tried that a few times.
There's a name for that, because everybody can't see color when they hear music. I do. I see colors when I hear music. A lot of music, not all music. But I can't remember exactly what it's called. But there is a name for that condition.
Well, that's fascinating.
Everybody doesn't see color when they listen to music. Yeah.
So do you think that Canada has done a good job or a poor job in promoting Indigenous art?
We're getting better at it, but I think we've done, over the years, a very poor job.
Well, I appreciate you sharing with us today some wonderful examples of Canadian Indigenous art.
Well, I've tried to be sort of fair between East and West and male and female and people that had training and people that didn't have training. And I am also very conscious of that conversation that I had with Chip, who said you've got to think of some of the people that weren't the victors and how they tried and couldn't succeed, but how difficult it could be living in a totally different culture from what you've grown up with.
Well, how true is that? Because you've mentioned on several occasions how many of these Indigenous artists spent time at a residential school, and it must have been an experience, whether good, bad, or trauma-inducing or whatnot. It was something they had to live through.
Two of them apparently committed suicide or died by unusual means at a very early age.
Well, thank you so much for exposing us to some Indigenous art on Canada Day. Really appreciate it. Happy Canada Day, Mom.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for asking me. I learned a lot myself in the process.
Well, that's our show for Canada Day. Thank you to Flora Crombie, my mom, a art expert, and hopefully some of you will go out and check out some of this incredible art that we have in Canada, because it is worth experiencing it and seeing. I think it is beautiful. That's the Brian Crombie Show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM, or you can stream me online at www.960am.ca, or all my podcasts and webcasts are available on briancrombie.com. Thanks again. Good night, everybody. Happy Canada Day.